Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Solomon, and I'd like to welcome back those of you who attended our first webinar and welcome the newcomers who are joining us for webinar 2 in our 4-part series. I am really glad you're here with us today. First, a bit of information about today's conversation. Almost 500 of us have registered for today's webinar. Please feel free to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do in the chat. Thank you to our amazing interpreter, Maria Jose Gutierrez, joining us all the way from Bogota, Colombia. She will be translating our webinar into Spanish in real time. Thank you, Maria Jose. To access the translation, click on the interpretation icon in your Zoom controls, then select Spanish. To mute the English in the background, select Mute Original Audio. To turn closed captioning on, click on the Show Captions icon in your Zoom controls and select your speaking language. You can also adjust the size of the subtitles. We welcome your questions and comments throughout today's conversation. Please use the chat feature if you have a comment to share or need help with a technical issue. Please place your questions for our guests in the Q&A box. Before we begin, I want to start with thanking my colleagues at Equality Florida and the team at the Brazelton Touchpoints Center, Catherine Knowles O'Brien, Michael Accardi, Nelson Artavira, and Ashley Gaddis for their partnership and support in planning and producing this series. I'm the Senior Manager of Parents and Family Support at Equality Florida, where I proudly lead our Parenting with Pride program, supporting LGBTQ+ families and parents of LGBTQ+ youth across Florida and beyond. For those of you who may be new to our work, Equality Florida focuses on advancing equality through advocacy, education, and coalition building to ensure that no one experiences harassment or discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. I do come to this work both professionally and personally. I'm a pediatric nurse, the founder and president of PFLAG Miami, a member of the Human Rights Campaign for Parents for Transgender Equality Council, but most importantly, I am a proud parent of 4 children, 3 of whom are part of the LGBTQ+ community. Over the past few years, I've had the privilege of connecting with thousands of families, not only in Florida, but across the country. And one thing I hear over and over again is this: parents need support too. And that is why these conversations matter so much. We are so proud to partner with Brazelton Touchpoints Center and Equality Florida on this webinar series, where we can have real conversations about practical skills for advocacy, wellness, and change, because parenting in this moment asks so much of families. Before we begin this webinar, I want to briefly recap a few key takeaways from our first Touchpoint session. In webinar 1, we talked about why communication and connection are so important, especially for LGBTQ+ youth navigating stress, uncertainty, or questions about identity. We discussed how open, affirming conversations help build trust and create a safe space where young people feel supported and heard. We also emphasized that parents and caregivers do not need to have all the answers. Simply showing up, listening, and leading with love can make a powerful difference. I am really excited to continue this series with tonight's episode, Pride in Our Wellbeing, supporting LGBTQ2IA+ parents and caregivers amid systemic stress. We will focus on the emotional and mental health needs of LGBTQ2IA+ parents and caregivers. We'll be talking about how we care for ourselves while caring for our children, how we build resilience in difficult moments, and how we find connection and hope in community. And especially during Mental Health Awareness Month, we want today to be a reminder that seeking support is not a weakness, it's a strength. As parents and caregivers, so many of us spend our energy protecting, advocating for, and supporting our children. But often we forget to ask ourselves a very important question: how are we doing? For LGBTQ2IA+ families, especially in today's climate, the stress can feel constant. Many parents are navigating fear, uncertainty, isolation, political attacks, and emotional exhaustion, all while trying to remain strong for their children. I can really relate. Come with us as we explore how identity can sometimes be a source of stress, but also a profound source of strength, connection, and healing. We'll talk about the importance of community, self-compassion, boundaries, and sustainable care, because supporting our children starts with supporting ourselves. I also want to acknowledge that simply showing up today is an act of care. By being here, you're investing not only in your family's well-being, but also in yours. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Noelle De La Cruz, Equality Florida's Director of Health Equity. Thank you all again for being here, for prioritizing your well-being, and for showing up for yourselves and your families today. I hope you leave here with your bucket refilled so you can continue to show up for your family and yourselves. Let's get started. I'm handing the mic over to you, Noelle.
Thanks, Jen, and good evening, everyone. What a beautiful and warm welcome. My name is Dr. Noelle De La Cruz. I use she, her pronouns, and as Jen mentioned, I currently serve as the Director of Health Equity for Equality Florida. In this role, I have the honor of working alongside healthcare providers, mental health professionals, and community leaders across the state to advance affirming systems of care for LGBTQ individuals, youth, and families. I'm also a licensed school psychologist with nearly 20 years of experience supporting LGBTQ youth and the parents and caregivers who love them. Over the years, I've witnessed both the incredible strength and courage of LGBTQ families and the very real emotional toll that can come from navigating systems that feel uncertain, politicized, and even harmful. Many families today are carrying layers of stress, right? I think we all are feeling it. Fear about safety, uncertainty about healthcare and our schools, worries about the future, and the emotional weight of advocating for your family or child in environments that do not always feel affirming or trustworthy. At the same time, we also know something else to be true. Community, connection, and supportive relationships are profoundly protective. LGBTQ people and families have always found ways to thrive, care for one another, and create joy and belonging, even in difficult moments. And that's really the heart of today's conversation. In recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month, this panel is centered not only on acknowledging stress and struggle, but also on building language and tools, connection, and hope. We want this conversation to feel honest while also offering you practical support while we're all navigating this moment together. And so today's panelists bring a powerful blend of professional expertise and lived experience. And I'd love to begin by inviting each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share a little about what brings them into this work. So my panelists, feel free to hop on camera here. We're going to get started. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Barr to introduce himself.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Sebastian Barr. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a licensed counseling psychologist out of Massachusetts. I have a private practice where I work with adolescents and adults. I also do research work, writing, and teaching, and am involved in advocacy around trans healthcare access, trans rights, and supporting families. My research and clinical work is mostly focused on trans well-being and mental health and trauma recovery, and has recently particularly focused on living meaningfully and thriving and flourishing amid sociopolitical oppression.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Barr. A fan of your work and practice, and also just so eager to have this conversation with you today. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Danny.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Danny Rosenkrantz. I use she, they pronouns. I am based in Florida and have a private practice called Brave Space Psychology that serves anyone who has SIPAC. But I do a lot of work supporting families. I have some really amazing groups. I have a parenting group for parents with LGBTQ plus kids, and a grandparent group for grandparents with trans and non-binary grandchildren. Those are also open if anybody needs support. We got you. And I am a huge fan of the work of Equality Florida and do a lot of advocacy support locally, in partnership with amazing folks like them, and Florida Voices for Health and lots of other really great Florida organizations that are fighting the good fight. I believe heavily in that resistance can come from the southern states like ours in a really beautiful way, and try to work together as a community to build that. That they can't take away the love we have for each other and the community that we build. And so conversations like this are everything, because community is how we get through, in my opinion. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Danny. Welcome. I am inspired by you always and appreciate your partnership. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Hurd.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you today. My name is Dr. Nevin J. Hurd. I use any and all pronouns. I consider myself really to be a scholar activist, an educator, and equity strategist, especially at the intersection of advocacy, institutional transformation, and community care. My doctorate and background is in counselor education. I currently serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Access, Belonging, and Compliance at the University of Wisconsin, La Crosse. So I really believe in public speaking and publishing research that has a deep commitment to intersectionality, wellness, belonging, and collective liberation. I essentially, at my core, I believe that advocacy is not just a moment, but a lifelong commitment to justice, repair, and radical imagination. And I'm excited at the opportunity to get to radically imagine with y'all today.
I love that. Thank you so much. I can't wait to radically imagine. I love that phrase. I'm excited to jump in. And thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Montoya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Luisa Montoya, and I currently serve as the president of PFLAG for Fort Lauderdale. But I will say that my main job that I love the most is I am the proud mother of a transgender teenager. And that keeps me very occupied, especially in South Florida and everything that's happening. So it's such an honor to be here representing many moms that are out there that are looking for support. Back to you, Noel.
Thank you, Dr. Montoya. Thank you for everything that you do. And bringing in, as you all can hear from our panelists here, so much lived experience, professional experience, right? And really calling on the collective and our commitment to being in this together to find joy and hope through some really challenging times. And so yeah, let's get started. I think, sort of grounding ourselves in some of the emotional realities that families are carrying right now, I think is a good place to start, right? We know we can all feel this, as I mentioned in the beginning. And I think when we think of parenting and caregiving in general, we know that many are balancing a lot, right? Everyday stressors, and caregiving alongside sort of that broader social and those political pressures that we're seeing and we're feeling right now. And so, Dr. Danny, I want to come to you first. I know just last night you were holding space for families through your work, as you were talking about. Can you start us off with just describing what are some of the emotional experiences that you're seeing most often right now among our LGBTQ youth, families you're working with, folks in the community? What's coming up most as folks are navigating the current climate?
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of overwhelm that folks are navigating. Certainly, a lot of the folks that I see are rooted in climates like Florida, and being able to feel like, how do I do this? How do I navigating? I mean, parenthood is so rife with so many unknowns and learnings from like the basic stuff. I'm a new mom, and so I really deeply connect to that experience right now. And I think this just adds like another similar layer of like, this is a whole new experience that parents are trying to figure out, but they're doing it in a context where they are having to navigate misinformation. They're navigating legislation that is deeply painful and jarring. I mean, to come out in a state like Florida, where our legislature is talking about trans people, like, I just think my trans clients, especially the young ones, are just so freaking brave and amazing for just boldly being themselves, even when governmentally we're navigating these moments. So I think there's a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, which I think in many ways is deliberate. And I mean, across the lifespan, like I went to college in Florida, and I have clients who are going to college in Florida now who are like, this is so hard. Like, where is the community? And I'm like, you have to find it in a new way on purpose. Like, they made us go underground in a lot of ways. And so I just think that folks are struggling with that misinformation, with having to be really strategic and really agentic in getting in community. And I feel really privileged to be able to be a person that can like download to them. Here are a bunch of different resources. I know about all the partners. And like, I think once we get in community, there's just so much there. And I do see like a transformation in folks, like this family that came to my group this week were new to the experience of having a transgender kid come out to them. And their questions and concerns and fears, like as we talked and more, it was like, oh, like there's so many people here that want that are doing this work and that care. And like, I'm really not alone. Being a message that I feel really grateful to be able to share because of all the great work being done, even in our state. I like to say that repeatedly. We're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere. But I think that fear and overwhelm is very real. And so finding places for support that can ground us in the realities that there is community, there are resources, there are medical providers and healthcare providers like myself who are here for you and want to help support you. I can tell you psychiatrists, I can tell you other mental health professionals, different kind of providers, HRT providers that are trustworthy. And so I think helping ground people with information is really helpful in these moments. But I would be lying if I didn't say that the fear was there and the overwhelm was there and the mistrust. Because people do get a lot of confusing information. I've had, like in my grandparent group, I viscerally remember we had one member that would come in with all this information about, but what about this? I read this article that says this thing, and it's like, okay, let's ground, let's talk about who wrote that. Let's talk about like helping folks understand kind of the context and the politicization. I think a lot of my work is grounding people and understanding the politicization of this moment. But those are some of the things that come to mind. I could probably talk all day, so I just want to make sure I'm not overspeaking.
I think the context is important. Like you're talking about the misinformation too. I mean, every day I feel like we're waking up and we're seeing really scary things, right? We're seeing scary things out of, New York. We're seeing scary things in Texas. Sure. We're seeing this permeate. Certainly over the past few years, Florida has been on the front lines, but this is something we're seeing spread nationally and happening all across the country, right? And I think as we're absorbing this, it sort of adds to those unknowns. Like you were talking about parenting in general, so many unknowns. How do I do this? And then all this information just brings up more fear and anxiety, right? And I think what tends to happen is we sort of see this like individualizing of symptoms, right? We start internalizing some of this and not necessarily knowing how to understand it or knowing what's happening, right? And so I think when we think of those connections to the larger sort of systemic stressors and the harms that are happening, sometimes that gets lost and we start internalizing some of that. And so Dr. Hurd, I actually want to come to you here because I know you have a lot of expertise in this area. And I would love if you can talk a little bit about those psychological impacts that families are feeling more from, that systemic standpoint, how we absorb all of this, and really how having language to describe that can actually become a pathway towards some validation and healing as we're navigating this.
Yeah, absolutely. As Dr. Daniel was talking, I was like, yes, like all these systems are coming down to unpack us both individually and collectively. And so I really, with our audience, want to share kind of three terms or concepts. And I'm sharing these really to name some of the experiences that you as caregivers might be having, you as caregivers of LGBTQ plus kids might be having, it just as LGBTQ plus folks or having folks in the realm that you might be going through and you might be finding it difficult to put some of these into words. So I'm here to kind of deliver you with some of these words. So one of which I'm going to actually start with, I think, how Dr. Danny really left off, which is I want to name like that we can have vicarious experiences that might be rooted in vicarious trauma, vicarious racism, vicarious homophobia. And basically, that means that we can be in a heightened state from just witnessing or hearing about something that's going on. So it doesn't have to impact us directly, but we can see it through a news story. We can read about a policy that we believe might impact us directly as LGBTQ plus folks or as our kids, and then right we can become hypervigilant or in a state where we're now worried about what's going to happen. And so I think we see this happening in society with news stories, and we can also think about the impact of folks living at the intersection of multiple disenfranchised identities. When you think about not just sexual orientation or identity, and not just gender identity, but race, class, immigration status, all those things. When we see those news stories come in, we can then be in a heightened state, even though it didn't impact us directly. I think kind of another concept I want to share about is moral injury. So I think just to name moral injury for us, is moral injury is basically the damage that's done to one's conscience or moral compass when they feel like they are perpetuating, witnessing, or failing to prevent acts that transgress their own moral beliefs, their values, or ethical code. And so how this might show up, right, is if you see your kid being impacted by a new school policy or their inability to participate in some way, or you feel like, right, your rights are being affected, and you might feel helplessness about being able to advocate appropriately for them or yourself, right? That is a letdown that is happening, and you might feel like that is an attack to your moral compass and code. It's the idea that we know the right thing to do, and for whatever reason, whether that be institutional constraints, we're unable to do anything further, right? Which I'm sure a lot of us might be feeling at this moment. And just the last one that I wanted to share is minority stress. And so we as human beings, all of us, we have life stressors that affect us every day, right? Late for work, the bus is late, if we're not on time, right? And everyone experienced those. Minority stress gets at the idea that folks who have an identity that are part of a marginalized group will have additional kind of stress just because they are oppressed in society. And so a lot of the research that was originally done around minority stress was actually focused on LGBTQ plus individuals, and then that was kind of extended to racial ethnic minority groups and folks with disabilities. So basically, it's the idea that just by being marginalized in society, we have additional stressors that we're carrying that can become chronic and high level over time because of stigma. That we're facing. And so I'm not sharing this to doom and gloom, but to give us language and so that we can recognize, right, when we might be getting impacted. Because I think one of the ways in which this permeates also is we feel like we're alone. We're not sure. We can't think of a specific trigger or incident, but I'm sharing this to say that this can become chronic, right, and pervasive. And so there is no specific event that necessarily has to be the one that's kind of creates these feelings and experiences for us.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you naming that because this is all around us, like all the time, right? And I think often, you named like we know the right thing to do, but we feel constrained, or like we, have sort of this like chronic stress baked into our everyday life that, in many ways, like we're waking up and we're carrying this and we're having these physiological reactions, and we're having potentially distressing thoughts and having difficulty navigating that, and not necessarily understanding sort of how we're absorbing this, right? And so I really do appreciate you and Dr. Danny starting us off with grounding us in that way, because this is real, right? These are real experiences all across the country. And like I said, we're waking up every day and seeing really scary things happening to our families, to our community. And so the question sort of becomes, what can we do with that, right? What's within our influence? What are we able to do to help our loved ones and our friends and ourselves move through this in ways where we can stay safe and healthy, but also recognize some things are out of our control, and that can be really, really difficult. And so I want to come to you, Dr. Barr, because I know so much of your work centers on helping people feel less alone, as Dr. Hurd was talking about, right? That feeling that can come up as we're going through these experiences. And you often speak about the incredible resilience and creativity within especially trans and queer communities historically and today. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how your own experience has shaped the way you think about not just resilience, but caregiving and even intergenerational healing, how we can find hope through each other. And, what do you want parents to sort of understand right now about this possibility for connection and growth over time when things feel really difficult?
Yeah, thank you. I'm also realizing that in my introduction, I didn't mention two important pieces of my identity and experience that I'm bringing to the conversation today, which is that I'm trans, that I started my gender transition journey 16, 17 years ago, and I'm a new dad, so to a 6-month-old. And so much of my personal work right now, thank you. I see the hearts. I appreciate it. Um, but yeah, so much of what I'm doing, caring for myself right now as a trans man and as a dad, witnessing the oppression today, experiencing what Dr. Hurd and Dr. Rosencrantz like really clarified for us, and looking toward potential futures. Has been really anchoring myself in trans and queer histories and understanding our lives right now as part of these huge legacies. And this is what I also try to facilitate for others, because we know that that kind of perspective and that kind of anchoring is really healing and grounding. And we know that our histories have not always been told. In fact, they're often hidden or erased. So we can really easily feel disconnected and disempowered if we're not intentionally seeking out knowledge of all who have come before us and what they've been able to create in their own really challenging and sometimes quite hostile contexts. But when we learn about these histories, we're reminded of our inherited ability to survive and thrive in our own contexts, even as they become increasingly hostile. So when I was thinking about this panel in particular, I knew that I wanted to talk a little bit about Billy Tipton, who is a dad in history who I admire. And for folks who aren't familiar, Tipton was the subject of a documentary called No Ordinary Man. And he was a jazz pianist in the 1950s. He was married and had 3 children. And he was assigned a female sex at birth, so meaning that he was a trans man, though he never used those words publicly to identify or describe himself. So he was a father and a very successful musician who was able to live in his authentic gender 80 years ago for his entire adult life. His music is soulful and at times joyful. And by all accounts, he was a good father who had meaningful relationships with his children, one of whom was holding him as he died at age 74. So it's very profound. It moves me. I feel moved to tears. It's very profound to me to know that trans and queer people have been building families for a very long time. Um, it's also like not unexpected that I wanted to share the story of a musician today also, because as you alluded to, Noel, I'm really another significant source of resilience that I draw upon personally and also try to share with others is trans art, including trans music. We live in a world where there is still so much messaging. We are confronting it every day, that trans and queer people are dangerous, that we're wrong, that we somehow take away from the beauty of the world. And we know that the opposite, of course, is true. Trans and queer people are inherently creative and generative and add so much to the world through our just being. And experiencing contemporary and historical art that my trans peers and ancestors have given the world really grounds me in these truths about our capacities, both what we have the ability to withstand, and what we have the ability to create. So, one of the things that I often say, in workshops is that I draw hope from witnessing trans people create things, whether that is art and music or vegetables grown in home gardens or homes built through community projects or families. And I do feel really, really lucky, beyond what I can put in words, to be speaking to you all today as a father. And yeah, something that I've learned in that time, in terms of sources of resilience, it's interesting. Of course, there's so many challenges that come with parenting, and I've just cracked into it. Uh, but also, children are machines. And what I mean is that babies and children bring a beginner's mind to the world that makes something that we take for granted, just like our ability to wiggle our toes or how caterpillars transform into butterflies every year. Like this thing that we're used to just like, yeah, it's a part of the world. It reminds us that it's incredible. And seeking out awe can really transform our experiences of stress and suffering. So if you have young people in your lives, you can look to them to be your guides in this. And that's been a very beautiful part of the past 6 months for me. I think I fall in love with the world anew every day through my baby's eyes, and that's really helpful when I'm also witnessing. I'm so glad that Dr. Hurd named vicarious impacts, but when I'm witnessing the really awful pieces of the world every day, to have this counter. Um, and then one more thing that I've learned, and then I'm gonna stop here and pass it on. Um, but I wanted to speak briefly to the beauty of building family that exists beyond kinship as it's traditionally defined. Dr. Danny talked about getting connected to people and community. I think about that with family and an expansive understanding of family. Queer and trans communities have always been really good at deconstructing social norms that unnecessarily limit us. And we know that family isn't about blood alone and doesn't require genetic linkages. I wrote here so that I said it exactly right in my notes. Parenting does take a village, and we come from legacies of village builders. So I asked the organizers of the panel if I could share a photo of my family with you all. Uh, because I was feeling like really I wanted to celebrate both being a trans dad, but also being the parent, or sorry, the son of parents of a trans person. And so this intergenerational legacy. But then I realized, wait, I want to show you all way more than this if I'm talking about family, because our family, like our baby already knows a much bigger family than these biological ties. Our community is a huge source of support for us as parents and will be a source of support to our child as she grows. And this is what I really like hope for you all, and my official recommendation as a psychologist, really strengthen your ties to other people, both in present in terms of community building, but also across time in terms of those relationships with ancestors. So as everyone else has mentioned, we could all talk forever, but I will stop sharing now and kick it back to you, Noel.
Oh, I love it. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that picture. It's beautiful. And I love, like you said, the moments of awe, right? Like just like looking around and being able to find beauty and joy. And you bring up for me, like what's landing on me is really like this sense of this family and community context, right? Across time, intersectionally, like how that shows up for us culturally, right? I think there can be additional layers of this as we're sort of navigating what this looks like within our family system, how this we find, joy in our history, and through different experiences that we have, and what those layers are for ourselves, our families, as we're navigating all of this. And I think what keeps coming up in conversation, right, is this sort of balance between the hard and the joy, right? Some of what can we find in between? I think we kind of can get stuck in these dichotomies sometimes, and these sort of traps, right, of what some of this misinformation and heaviness can kind of get us down into. And what you really brought up for me is where we can look for those glimmers, and certainly that can be complicated when we hold intersectional identities, right? When there's these sort of layers of stigma and barriers that might complicate that for us. And so, Dr. Montoya, I do want to come to you here, because there have been some significant challenges in your own journey that you've experienced. But given those experiences, you also have such a powerful story about how you were able to transform those challenges into sources of strength, right? Into purpose and impact, to find these glimmers and to find strength and hope, in your own family and with communities that you serve. So I'd love to hear from you and have you share your story and your strength with us.
Thank you. Well, a couple years ago, we were victim of 7 hate crimes, and I never thought that I was gonna be a victim of a hate crime. And everything started little by little, as pouring toilet paper on our house. I thought it was something, by teenagers. I didn't pay attention until it escalated that they broke my windows, they hit me and my child. And it was a very traumatic experience. The first thing I did in that moment is realize that I needed help. And when I say help, it's not just my family or friends, is I needed to find a therapist. I needed to call the police. Even the FBI was involved, but I also need to find organizations out there that can help us. I think as minorities, we are so used to reach out just to our family of our circle. But when I realized that the FBI, for example, was involved, I realized there is something bigger out there. So I did take the time to look for organizations, and that's when I found, Equality Florida. And that is when I said I have to knock doors, because I honestly, even that we see on commercials that there is evil, you never think that can happen to you. And I think that was the part for me that I was in shock, because I couldn't believe that they were not only such an evil people, but they were attacking us. And that is when I reached out. And, I'm so blessed that I got in contact with Jennifer. And I remember calling her and crying and telling her what happened. And she started contacting me with everyone. She helped me to, enroll my kids on the school system. Who can I call? Even assistance from a legal standpoint. So for me, it's like really, I won't say get out of your comfort zone, but reach different doors, because we are so used to ask for help only with the people that we know. And sometimes I have a tendency, and I think that's as a Latina, to tough it up. Like anything that happened, we are like, come on, you need to tough it up. And in this case, I was so broken, and my family was so broken, that I realized this is beyond just, finding a therapist. This is just beyond calling 911. This is actually a big deal. And when that happened, we even have, for example, broadcast people, so they came, they interview us, and I start realizing that I was minimizing the hate crimes. I was on denial because I didn't want to see myself as a victim, because I am such a powerful Latina that thinking I am a victim was going to put me down and make me feel like less of a woman. And not only that, but I was surprised how many people reach out to us and giving us support and giving us help. I also started doing a better job protecting my family. I am huge in social media and, advocating for the community, but I start, I need to be smarter how I handle my social media. I have to be more cautious how I handle my social media. But I also say I have to speak up, because at the beginning I didn't want to say anything. I was so afraid, which is not my personality, but I think when you're a victim of hate crime, you have this paranoia. So I decided, I'm going to speak up of what happened. And I learned about P flag, and I am so proud that something so evil that happened to us, it turned out to be one of the blessings. I was able to meet Equality Florida, P flag. I'm the president of P flag. And I feel even if you are going through hell right now, something is going to happen. You just need to reach out to organizations that are going to support you. You need to ask for help. Don't minimize what is happening to you. And I found a new family. And I am so blessed because I know I can call Jennifer, I can call Noel. I know I have a family that I can reach out. And especially as an immigrant, I don't have family here, right? So I have to build within South Florida my family. And there are many resources out there. There are also resources in Spanish, because even that I'm fluent in English, there is many things that I want to do in Spanish. So I was happy that I was able to find many resources there available. And thank you so much, Noel, for this opportunity. Back to you.
Yeah, no, well, I thank you for, sort of bridging us into how we can lean on each other, right? And one of those things you said was I realized like I needed help. And that could be really hard, right? Because we do have these defense mechanisms. We're minimizing, we're internalizing. Um, there's lots of things that come up where we, try to talk ourselves out of this and keep it moving, right? For a whole host of reasons that can be protective in a lot of ways. And so I want to open this up actually to the panel, because Dr. Montoya, like I said, you bring up a lot of really great points about like sort of how we even arrive at knowing that we need help, and then once we do, how we get there, and different strategies, right, and ways that we can navigate that. So I want to open that up to our amazing panelists and see, we've talked about the fear, the stress, the uncertainty. We've also talked about healing and connection, and even some non-traditional ways that I know, like, as a therapist, we think of sort of these traditional ways we've been trained, in graduate school, and these traditional techniques. And I think this moment calls for more than that, right? More than some of these traditional methods we think of when we think of coping. And so I want to open it up to the panel and see what you all think about what that can look like for folks as they're navigating this moment. Anyone want to hop in and share? Dr. Danny, I know that you've talked a lot about like just even like you have your group, right? I think of like you get new folks in there all the time, right? Who I imagine have come there for all different reasons, right? Have shown up on different terms. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, I think I think what you're saying about like there's so many ways to get support, and it can look different for all of us. So I feel like it's really about like figuring out what is the community that you need and you're looking for. Like, where do you need to feel seen? Maybe it's in, like, I love every time I hear Dr. Barr talk about art and music. I feel like so inspired. I want to like listen to the playlist he's created right after this. But I think, for some of us it's art, for some of us it's, finding physical community where you can like literally be in a room with people. For some people it's finding a virtual community, maybe like a group of people that plays a video game you like, or like whatever your thing is, a gardening club. Like, there are queer folks and trans folks, like we're everywhere. So finding your version of that. I know somebody mentioned in the chat, like, how do you navigate the challenges of multiple marginalized identities? I do a lot of work with queer and Jewish community, and I think that it's similar in the sense of navigating like the feeling of I don't know where I fully fit and like not feeling like fully seen. And when you're holding multiple politicized identities. And so I think your question of how do we find each other is a really important one. And I have found the internet to be a really powerful tool. I know the internet has a lot of challenges, understatement of the century. But I do think that like finding community that is a niche and like intersectional can sometimes that can be a starting place. So if you do have like a unique story, and I don't know, I feel like putting yourself out there sometimes it's scary. Like I really love how Dr. Montoya like spoke about like the bravery of reaching out. I think there are a lot of organizations that are trying to create like infrastructure for things. Like in my Jewish community, I work a lot with an organization called Keshet that is a Jewish queer organization, and they do community gatherings and like different pieces. So finding your niche identity pieces, and it doesn't have to be, I don't know, whatever the stereotype is. Like you don't have to go to whatever that is in your mind. You can make it for yourself. And if it doesn't exist, sometimes being that brave person, like Dr. Louise, like you can make it. Like I know where I live in Tampa, there isn't as large of a queer Jewish community as when I was in Miami. And I would go to the Shabbat events and different things in Miami and just feel like, oh my God, I feel so seen. I feel so held. Like this feels so good. And I really crave that in my community here. And I've had to host the events, and it's not all, and it's growing, like it's changing, and it's taking time, but like we're letting each other know we're here. And then sometimes like as you build it, like other people from different spaces are also joining, and it's just it's like a web of support. And I know I've also felt like anxious in different spaces, like given the state of the world and lots of things happening, like going into one community or the other, like feeling like I have to speak for the whole community in some way, or like is someone going to reject me or make assumptions about me? And so I've been really surprised by the love and care, and like some of that, I mean, it's real. The what Dr. Hurd was speaking of, like the vicarious trauma and overwhelm related to the world, the heaviness and the grief is so real. I speak so much about grief with folks I work with because we're grieving a lot. And safety is one of those things. You know, when I listen to Dr. Montoya, I feel that so deeply. But we're grieving, like maybe feeling like we belonged in some way. And I think the anxiety about what our neighbors feel and think about whatever pieces of ourselves that we're not sure how they would respond. But sometimes when we like let them in, we actually feel a lot more seen and held than we would expect. So I've been pleasantly surprised at the beautiful community that exists here where I am.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that come to my mind.
Yeah, just some. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, they're all valid. And you know, I think of how do we find those spaces, right? Because I think it could be challenging. We have someone that that did ask the question, you know, especially when we're trying to find, you know, community with folks. You were talking about intersectional identities, right? And sometimes these spaces aren't always representative of all of the diverse cultures and races and ethnicities and that the community has, right, within it. And so I'm wondering if anyone else on the panel, Dr. Montoya, you've already talked you know, a little bit about it. I'm not sure if there's anything that you want to expand on there, or Dr. Hurd or anyone else that, you know, wants to share what it's like trying to find community maybe in places where there are challenges, you know, connecting and finding others that you know, that you identify with.
Well, I want to share that. So for many years, I lived in Denver, and it
Mm,
was a cultural shock for me to move to Florida. like, for
Wow.
as simple as it sounds, you never hear people in Denver say gay marriage. They just say marriage, right?
mm, mm-hmm,
So for me, it was a cultural shock, and I felt very lonely because I live in a red state, and I live in a red community where there are signs that everywhere. I mean, it's very clear, and I feel isolated. But I have to make the extra step. And, as sad as it sounds, I feel I'm kind of like in the closet, but I make sure that I put little things or I catch on little things. So I just start finding these Democrat liberal friends. So don't think that you're the only one in the community. So for me, it's really funny. I went to play peekaball and I was talking to this person, and this person asked me, "Are you a liberal?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yes." And we hug. It was so funny because it reminds me as an immigrant when I moved here and I find people from Colombia, and I was very excited. But
mm-hmm,
I will say there are people like you, and there are people with the same values that you have. You just have to go that little extra mile and you will find it. But I will say try to also do activities related like for example, I'm proud, Jennifer and I did an event for PFLAG for families, and we have multiple families that came, and they were like, oh, we didn't know there were things out there, so they are out there. So make sure that you go, like for example, I go to the Fort Lauderdale Instagram, and I have alerts that come and tell me I have an event on Eventbrite that anything that is LGBTQ related, I get an alert. So just make sure that you go that extra mile to find your own people so you don't feel as lonely, because everything that's happening can feel very lonely.
mm. Dr. Hurd, I saw you come off mute also, so go ahead. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna speak specifically, as I kind of mentioned, in the university realm, and so I think, right, finding community in general is so important, but especially when I think about the formative years that some of you might be navigating or helping your, kids navigate as they transition from maybe high school to
Mm-hmm,
college. I think, right, it goes as no surprise that anti-DEI policies have resulted in maybe the elimination of college LGBTQ plus centers or change the ways in which they're able to function. So I think when it comes to finding community and you're talking to your kid and maybe trying to choose where to go, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to blossom in a community that loves you and accepts you, and you kind of get to say that, right, out
mm-hmm,
loud. And so, right, I think it's about making informed choices. So I really encourage folks to, when they're in that period, to kind of look for that. Also, some of the ways that they have changed the ways that they might function is if you see that a university has an LGBTQ plus center, they might have had to change like being identity focused and allowing they have to be open to all people, but they should still be doing programming and events that affirm the identities and realities of LGBTQ plus folks. And so I just want to state that. And then I want to also state, especially for anyone caregivers that might be sending people off, I'm now realizing it's summer, so many of you might be right in that time is we in the Midwest, at least, we had noticed pre-COVID LGBTQ plus students, there's reporting issues, but self-reporting had increased. So their comfort with saying like, yes, I am LGBTQ plus and I'm at this university. So that had increased, but their utilization of direct services decreased. And so we what we noticed is that was originally like a good thing, and that they were finding community with each other because folks were able to be better represented. They were feeling more comfortable to just come out, whether that be at any student orientation. So we noticed that pre-COVID, post-COVID, a lot of people have had issues with communicating and finding groups, and so that had contributed to the lack of utilization or engagement. And so the reason I'm bringing that up to you is because if you're helping your like loved one navigate college, they might not realize or have connected to an LGBTQ plus center that's on campus, especially if I have to monitor myself. Stuff goes down, right? Or stuff hits the fan, right? So if you feel comfortable, it might be great for you to remind them and connect them to those services. Because I think one of the things that has become a theme of this panel is uh, um, isolation, right? That feeling coming up. And so folks are not alone. And so I just wanted to throw that as people are navigating, finding their communities. That's what it might look like on college campuses.
Yeah, no,
Can I add,
go ahead. Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing, like on to piggyback off Dr. Hurd. Even in places that they have lost their centers, which, hello, Florida, a lot of our schools have lost them, but there's still student groups. So, like, that's another resource, like, even at UF, where some of my clients are at, like, there's still a trans group. There's still like an LGBT plus group broadly. Like the students are still there and they're still organizing. So also like figuring out, like strategizing around like where might they be? Even in like where we are in Tampa Bay, like there's like in the school system, the school might not have a oh my gosh, what is it called? Not PFLAG, the school, a GSA might not have a GSA, but they're like one of our counties has like a community GSA to kind of represent and have a space. So like we're here and we're creative, and we gotta be louder so we can find each other. But that does also require some bravery. So if you need help with that, we got a lot of cool folks here to help.
Well, yeah, because I think of the providers or organizations, we know certainly a lot of folks in the Zoom room with us are supporting families and LGBTQ youth and individuals. And so it is this call to action for us too, right? Of how can we be visible? How can we make sure folks know where the affirming support is, and helping folks understand how they can look for that. And Dr. Hurd, I appreciate the school psychologist in me appreciates bringing up college transition, especially at this time of year. It's so important, and it's such a time filled with, again, the mixture of all these emotions, right? And layered on top of that, wanting to know that your kiddo is going to be safe when they are when you send them off. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And we have a couple of minutes here. And so I just want to give everyone on the panel one last moment to sort of reflect with us. Today's webinar was called Pride in Our Wellbeing. You all have talked about so many amazing things that I hope folks have felt in community on this call. Folks have felt seen and validated and also hopeful. And so to close us out here, just want to have you all share what's one message when we think of pride in our well-being. What's one message you hope every parent, caregiver, or provider leaves with tonight after this webinar? And we could start with Dr. Barr. Go ahead.
That's good. I was leaning in.
Yeah.
I hope that as was I think modeled on the panel, you leave knowing that you can hold both your grief and fear and that category of really distressing and difficult feelings with feelings of joy and things that bring you meaning, and that these can and actually must coexist.
Thank you. We can just popcorn around. Final thoughts. Dr. Hurd, you talked about radical imagination. So if you have anything you want to close us out with on that, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'll just say, just to affirm you, you are wonderful, you're beautiful, you are intelligent, you're supposed to be here, you are the moment, you were the history, you're the legacy, right? And one dorky thing I guess I want to leave you with is when we talk about well-being and wellness, my favorite model of wellness is Myers' five-factor well, which basically there are five different factors of wellness, and one of which is the essential self. So these are essential to our wellness. And she categorized these as cultural identity, gender identity, spirituality, and self-care. And I say that so that for anyone who tells you like you shouldn't worry or you shouldn't feel the way you feel or you shouldn't be the bomb.com, you shouldn't be all that, like it is literally your identity makes up your wellness and well-being, and it's intrinsic to who you are. So I hope that through this you are rejuvenated to continue to be just that, who you are.
Dr. Danny and Dr. Montoya, final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to say that make sure that all of that anger that you have for Mama Bear, how can you change that to policy and change? Because you can come, you can complain, you can post things on social media, but we are here because we want change. Give Noel and Jennifer a call. Hey, I want to be on Tallahassee. I want to talk to lawmakers because we have to take it to the next level. So make sure that you channel that anger in such a positive way that you can support your child.
Thank you. And our next two webinars are going to touch exactly on that, Dr. Montoya. So everyone who's on here, make sure you join our next two because we're going to be talking about how we harness this for that power. So thank you. Dr. Danny, coming to you last.
So the thing that I was thinking about, I really appreciated our conversation as we were prepping for this. And I know in that conversation, I shared that, that I have these families that are coming. And so often that fear is so prevalent. And what we often forget in that fear is that we don't know like the joy that is accessible to us on the other side. And how many people that are just here ready to love you and be in your chosen family. And so I just want to remind you of that. I know we talked about it in the context of new parenthood and like that being a parent, you're so aware of the things like fatigue and exhaustion that you're like when somebody tells you as you're thinking about parenthood, but you can't imagine like the love and awe that everything that Dr. Bart was talking about. Like my kiddo was noticing rain yesterday and like just the look on his face. I'm like, oh yeah, like you don't know what this is. Like we haven't played in it yet, but like it's gonna blow his mind. And like that's just like those kind of moments I think are wrapped up in any experience where there's newness and there's just a beautiful community here waiting for you. So and maybe you're already here and heck yes if you're already here, but if you're not here or you're not in it yet, like I just want to say we love you and we're waiting.
Well, that is a perfect place to leave off. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Barr, Dr. Rosenkrantz, Dr. Hurd, and Dr. Montoya for this wonderful conversation. Thank you all who joined us today. And I'm going to pass it back to Jennifer to close us out.
Thank you, Noelle, and to all our expert panelists. Honestly, I did not realize how badly I needed to be reminded to find joy in every day, especially when times are hard. And thank you to our audience for your participation. We want to remind you that you will receive an email later this week or early next week with links to the recording of today's conversation, also a resource handout, and a link to a feedback survey. We would really appreciate if you completed it so that we can learn how to improve our programming. We also hope you can join us in 2 weeks for our next conversation in this series, and I believe they're only getting better. On June 3rd, our conversation will focus on storytelling. Episode 3, Pride in Our Stories, using our lived experience to advocate, connect, and lead. So you can join this free conversation and learn why your story really matters and its power. Learn how to share your story with intention, set boundaries, and decide what feels right for you and your family. We know that your voice can create change in your community and beyond. We have 2 featured experts from HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, that's going to give us tools to create our story. We also want to let you know about another Brazelton Touchpoints Center free webinar focused on LGBTQ plus youth and families on Wednesday, May 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Take care. Thank you.